ऋतु, जिंदगी की असली उड़ान अभी बाकी है। जिंदगी के कई इम्तिहान अभी बाकी हैं। अभी तो नापी है हमने मुट्ठी भर जमीन, अभी तो सारा आसमां बाकी है। नमस्कार, आप सभी का हार्दिक अभिनंदन। हमने आत्मनिर्भर भारत का जो सपना देखा है, वही सपना हमारे महापुरुष, चाहे वे स्वामी विवेकानंद हो या महात्मा गांधी, हर क्षेत्र में हर काल में देखते आए हैं। इनकी परिकल्पना को सजीव रूप देने के सार्थक प्रयास किए जा रहे हैं और शिक्षा का एक ऐसा रूप स्वरूप विकसित करने पर जोर दिया जा रहा है जो बच्चों को आत्मनिर्भर, निडर तथा हुनरमंद बनाए। हुनर है तो कल है, हुनर है तो कद्र है। यही स्वर मुखर कर रहा है आज का हमारा पहला सत्र, स्किलिंग इन स्कूल, कल्टिवेटिंग द एंटरप्रेन्योरियल माइंडसेट इन एजुकेशन। स्पीकर्स के रूप में हमारे साथ हैं श्री रतन प्रकाश वटल, IAS, चेयरपर्सन सेंट्रल विस्टा ओवरसाइट कमिटी, former finance secretary, Ministry of Finance, former principal advisor, Niti Aayog. Dr. Vinay Thakur, additional director general, Ministry of Electronics and IT. Shri Raj Nehru, vice chancellor, Shri Vishwakarma Skill University, Haryana. Moderators के रूप में हमारे बीच हैं डॉक्टर अशोक पांडे, डायरेक्टर, एल्कॉन ग्रुप ऑफ स्कूल्स, डॉक्टर राजेश हसीजा, डायरेक्टर, इंद्रप्रस्थ इंटरनेशनल स्कूल, द्वारका, और कोऑर्डिनेटर के रूप में हमारे बीच हैं मिस रीना राजपाल, जॉइंट सेक्रेटरी NPSC और प्रधानाचार्य, दरबारी लाल DAV मॉडर्न स्कूल, शालीमार बाग। आप सभी का स्वागत है। मैं सादर आमंत्रित करती हूँ डॉक्टर अशोक पांडे और डॉक्टर राजेश हसीजा जी को। मान्यवर, आपका स्वागत है।
Thank you, Komal ji. On behalf of the committee, I take up the initiative. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and greetings to the Hunar India. Skilling is an integral part of Indian education system. Our scriptures are replete with the anecdotes of our children being imparted skill education while in Gurukuls. All of us know Mahabharata. Arjun, apart from acquiring warrior skills, was also a great musician, or same as Yudhishthira. That's how they could survive Agyatwas as Brihanala or counselor to the king or various other things. However, the axis of Indian education system got changed due to various invasions and rules. The reforms introduced by Lord Macaulay drew a clear line of distinction between the so-called white-collar jobs and skilled jobs referred as menial jobs. Thus, post-independence, even in India introduced industrial, green and white revolution, there was still a focus only on very few selected career. For any country, we all know students are its human capital. And thus it's very essential to empower them for the development of Indian economy. The Indian government also introduced Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana scheme to promote recognition and strengthen the formal school learning system. The National Education Policy 2020 has also outlined special steps to be incorporated in the school curriculum. Developing knowledge on skilling will definitely nurture an enterprising mindset, which not just only confined to economic activities, but it would also stimulate students to think creatively and aspiringly. With a huge demographic dividend, if we do not reorient the newer perspective of transaction of the school curriculum, the thought of developed society, and probably a key global country, India, will remain an unfulfilled dreams. To discuss various challenges and opportunities on skilling school education, we have three eminent experts on skill education with us on this panel discussion. My greetings to Mr. Ratan P. Wattal, Dr. Vinay Thakur, and Mr. Raj Nehru. My first question and query to Mr. Ratan P. Wattal. Sir, you have been talking when you were principal advisor to Niti Aayog about capacity building, about training. This is a major issue of reform education. What is the roadmap? What are the opportunities? What are the challenges? Please guide us. Over to Mr. Ratan P. Wattal. So you have to unmute yourself.
Thank you, Rajesh, and thank you I thank the conference for inviting me for this roundtable or seminar, which is being held today. I'll get straight to the point. You have asked about the roadmap of skilling, but let me just tell you where all this comes from. Actually, I was also a member of the Economic Advisory Council to the Prime Minister, and we had done a study on how employability and the scope of employment was being addressed and the challenges the country was facing since the turn of the century. That's about 2000, the year 2000. And in a nutshell, I'd just like to say that India's population has been increasing by about 1.7% per annum in this last 20 years or whatever you may say. However, the employment rate has been increasing only by 0.8% of the population. Now, as you see, this is a huge challenge. And this is, I'm not getting into COVID and this, and these are challenges which have come up recently. But there's a huge gap between the percentage increase and the way we are getting people involved into employment. And here again, we are a country which is about 1.4 billion, 140 crores, of which 67% of the population is between the age of 15 to 64. Again, there was a survey which was done by the NSSO, it's a statistical organization, which actually showed that vocational training or skill training between the age of 15 to 59, this of course survey was done around 2011-12, and I don't think the situation is very different. Only 2.2% of this age group received formal vocal education, vocational training, and about 8.6 received informal vocational training. Therefore, this whole skilling thing was really in the back burner. It was on the back and nobody was really looking at it. And all our prior education policies had really been focusing on the formal sector or the formal education sector. And even now, that's important. But what were these challenges which were coming up, or the impediments when we looked at skilling, which is linked directly with employment generation? Because that is really what drives growth in a country. Because skilling was being given a low priority. Even within government departments, you find at that time, and even still it exists now, there's lack of coordination. Each department was doing its own kind of vocational skills and departmental trainings, etc., which they were funding. And there was also a paucity of trainers and there was a demand-supply mismatch between what was required in a changing economy and who were these people being trained. And there was also a very limited connect between the skilling space and that of the formal school learning and also the higher learning in universities. And again, we find even now, predominantly our employment has been in the unorganized sector where large number of people are employed. And one of the things which was never addressed in the past was non-inclusion of entrepreneurship development. Now, all these challenges, I think, have been addressed in the new roadmaps which have been built up, because in 2014, the government created a Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship in 2014. And I'm saying this because this predates the SDGs, which came in 2015, or even the new education policy, which is 2020. And the skill development really department, once it was made, was really a coordinating department, not only within the government of India at the federal level, but also coordinating with the state level organizations, because this is really a state subject. And as a consequence, we have a national policy for skill development and entrepreneurship, which was defined in the year 2015, which basically addresses the key obstacles of skilling, like its aspirational values, because it was always very low earlier. It had low outcomes. There were quality issues. Now, all this have been addressed in this policy. In fact, that policy has 4 pillars. This is one of them. The second was to align the demand and supply, or to bridge the skill gaps between the requirements of the economy or the industries, or however you might say it, and also the use of technology in all this. The third pillar on which this policy was based, or is based, is the whole issue of equity, skilling for marginalized people, people who have been left behind, women especially, gender issues. And I must say that in that study which we had done over about employment, you find while employment was increasing in absolute terms, the percentage of employment of women have been falling in this country, and which is a concern, and there are reasons for it. And I think this policy of skilling is addressing these issues at the policy level. And the fourth pillar, of course, which I mentioned, is entrepreneurship. It was, the whole focus is not only for seeking jobs, but the person actually becomes a job creator. So as a consequence of this, the government of India set up a national skill development mission in 2015, which again was trying to address issues of common norms, centers of excellence, skilling universities, which I think one of the speakers, Mr. Raj Nehru, is going to perhaps talk about, and also the whole issue of academic equivalence to within universities. Now, having done this, you have, as Rajesh also mentioned, once you have a policy, what came out of it was a set of programs using certain institutions which have also come up. Especially, I'll just name a few, like the NSDC, the Skill Development Corporation, which actually pilots the PM's Kaushal Vikas Yojana, which is their flagship program, the PM Kaushal Kendras. Then you had other initiatives also being done by the DGT, the Directorate General of Training, which was an existing institution, which basically addresses issues of craftsman training schemes, instructor training. And then we have new institutions which have come up, which are addressing entrepreneurship development initiatives and also financial inclusion. Now, here I must say in 2015, we also became sort of signatories of the UN goal number 4, SDG goal, which was also adopted by India, where global education and development agenda is is a part of that SDG, and we are also signatories to that. And eventually you find, I mean, I'm just giving you the roadmap. You have the national education policy coming up in 2020, which is a very fine document. And actually the key words in that policy, if you read the introduction, is basically about education being holistic, multidisciplinary, and integrated. And in part 2 of that policy, which deals with higher education, there is a whole chapter or a section on reimagining vocational education, which talks about setting up a national committee for the integration of vocational education and bringing schools, universities, industries, and other stakeholders together. So I would say that is, in a sense, would be a roadmap or a snapshot of what has happened in the last 7-8 years and where it came from. I'll stop here and engage with the other speakers. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Watal, for bringing in some very significant factors as far as skilling India is concerned. 2 or 3 things you mentioned are very important. First, our national commitment, our international commitments through the SDGs that you talked about. But one thing that you talked about is this parity between the formal education and vocational education, which has been a great issue in this country. So thank you very much for flagging those issues. It gives a very different and fresh and a challenging perspective to the whole issue. And that is where I would like to bring in our another distinguished speaker, Dr. Vinay Thakur. And Dr. Vinay Thakur, while I invite you, I will request you to focus a little bit also, in addition to what you propose to say, as to how this parity can be maintained and how this entrepreneurial skill can be developed in the children, so that this skill education and vocationalization is not only tagged with those who are marginalized or those who are at the last end of the queue of employment, and how this whole country starts viewing vocationalization and skill education a little more with respect and dignity. Dr. Vinay Thakur, over to you.
Thank you, sir, and very good morning, Bhattal sir, Mr. Nehru, Dr. Acharya, Jyoti Gupta, Dr. Pandey, and everyone. And thank you so much for calling me for this wonderful conference. I work for Ministry of Electronics and IT, where we are implementing Digital India. And when we started working on it in 2014, the vision was directly given by Honorable Prime Minister, and the vision was to use technology to empower society, and then going forward to bring about a knowledge economy in the country. This has 3 big pillars of creating infrastructure, services, and empowerment. And empowerment is very, very important. Even Dr. Bhattal was talking right now that how the skilling, because for empowerment, we must do skilling of the people, we must engage with them, we must ensure that we have the solutions in Indian languages. So around that, we have been working, and then we started few programs also around that. One program was PM G Disha, which was a Gramin Saksharta mission for the training digital literacy of the citizen. And we conducted a survey, and then we identified around 6 crore rural youth who are being trained. And we have covered around 3 crore of them right now. We started another program. I'll see a little bit focus on the rural areas, because there is a big digital divide, which we have been talking of. So the CSC is a big program where we set up around 3.74 lakh CSCs out there in rural areas, and created employment of around 12 people. They are the rural entrepreneurs who provide the citizen-centric services out there in rural areas. And not only the citizen-centric services, e-services, but also carry out certain entrepreneurial works, one of the this entrepreneur in Rajasthan even started a dairy cooperative out there. Someone started, in addition to providing the services, they also started the call center facilities out there. So probably there is a need, and where we need to facilitate, we need to empower the citizen. And my ministry itself started number of programs, like we started one program called TIDE, Technology Incubation and Development Entrepreneur. Ministry of MSME started many programs. They have around 22 to 23 schemes related to the skilling, related to funding, starting from Aspire, where they provide training, they provide funds. We have a scheme from Ministry of Science and Technology called MIDI, where how to nurture ideas among kids. So that is a scheme around it. Startup India is a huge success, where government has facilitated a single window type of system where one can register. They are provided legal aid, they are provided financial aids. So lot around that. Startup India is a big movement. And then Atal Innovation Mission, which Niti Aayog is driving. Around 8,700 centers have been set up in the country. So these are few things which we started around that time, and we are giving big focus on emerging technologies, because future is, as Vatal sir was talking of, that we need to put technology behind everything, and then we are giving a lot of focus on technology. We have started Future Skill program to skill the kids, skill the college going students, even school students also can also participate and learn on latest technologies like artificial intelligence, machine learning, deep learning, blockchain, AR, VR, and IoT. And in addition to that, we have also set up Center of Excellence in these areas. Around 25 Center of Excellence were opened by the government, in order anyone can participate, register, set up his unit, and they are also facilitated in terms of that they get their customers out there, they get funding, they get a common infrastructure, and this is how the government is working, and then providing opportunity to everyone so that they can be an employer. Instead of looking for employment for themselves, they can become an employer, they can become an entrepreneur and do something for the country. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Vinay Thakur, talking about the technology integration, mission technology, the way these have been introduced to provide future skills. My request now and query to Professor Raj Nehru, the Vice Chancellor of Shri Vishwakarma Skill University. Sir, Vishwakarma, the creator of our universe, the most skilled person, and you are the Vice Chancellor of that university. So I take you as the ultimate guide in sharing with us your knowledge about the skilling. On one hand, sir, the World Economic Forum estimates that the pace and the scale of disruption brought forth by the fourth industrial revolution would require more than 1 billion people in the world to reskill by 2030. Even they are saying the core skill required to perform existing jobs must be changed and reskilled up to a level of 42%. So you are at a university level where the skills from school to college, and college, they become the trainer, they become the job seeker, they become job provider. How do you guide at the school level when we train them, when we train our student learning to learn, so that skilling, reskilling, upskilling could be a part of the journey of their from education to career? Over to you, Professor Raj Nehru.
Thank you. May I request the host to allow me to share the presentation, please? Okay, thank you. Is my presentation visible?
Raj, we can see your screen now. Yes.
Okay, thank you. So first of all, thank you very much to Dr. Sudha Acharya, chairperson of this NPSC annual conference. And thank you for inviting me to speak during this occasion on the second day. I'm glad that I had the opportunity of being part of the team where I'm speaking along with Dr. Ratan Wattal and Dr. Vinay Thakur. It's a privilege. So what I did, I kept a couple of charts for me to share with the audience. While we had an elaborate presentation by Dr. Wattal about the overall policy architecture for last couple of years that has gone into, and how it started some decades back and now how it has progressed now. I still consider that the biggest challenge today in the skill and vocational education is that I call it 4P syndrome. We have an issue of perception, progression, parity, and practice. And this perception is across all ages and all levels. People still continue to feel that the skill or vocational education is the last resort, and it is offered to those who are not able to become successful in general education or technical education. So that's a perception. And that's how the entire education ecosystem is treating this vocational and skill education. The second important challenge is the progression. We don't know, once a person completes a certificate course or a vocational program, how does one go up? In the general and technical education, people have clarity about the movements, vertical mobility or the horizontal mobility. We have another challenge of parity and practice. The practice is the issue emerging from lack of infrastructure, lack of quality trainers. The vocational education continues to be treated the way the general education is today treated, while as the objectives of vocational education are very, very specific, well-defined, but unfortunately that's not happening. So I put a couple of charts because my topic was more around the schooling. And I have just gathered few charts together, few some data points together, which is not very new, but most of you would be aware about it. We a nation with 1.3 billion population, where 41% of the population is less than 18 years. So approximately 50 crore people are today in this age group. And one of the biggest challenges today that we have is that more than 35 million children today between the age group of 6 to 11 do not attend school, which is one of the biggest challenge that the nation is today facing. And when we were hearing about the women part, more than 53% of the girls in the age group of 5 to 9 are illiterate, which is the biggest challenge. Look at the dropouts. You have a major dropouts happening at upper primary and secondary. And why I'm highlighting this upper primary and secondary, because a huge population today, when they drop out from the schools, they largely enter into the labor market or the self-employment market. And because they are not skilled, they are not well skilled, they are not vocationally trained, they land up into menial jobs. And that landing up into the menial jobs also means the sustainability of those jobs is very poor. The cumulative annual growth rate of earnings in those jobs and continuity in those jobs with the good earnings with time also diminishes with time. So that's another challenge when we see early dropouts happening at the school. And one of the biggest challenges today, what we see, why people are dropping, most of the surveys have indicated it's largely because of the financial issues that they have at home. So the boys have to enter into the labor market, or girls will have to stay back at the home. So these are the two indicators that tell us what's happening with the small children when we look at them. And another reason is when students prefer to drop out, besides economic reasons, the other reason is they do not show their ability and alignment with the requirement and challenges of education at a specific higher level. And because they are not able to compete with that level, so they prefer to drop out because of various other reasons. There is another challenge at the school level, which most of the data points, and you may be aware. Then look at the reading skills. If you look at the reading skills at standard 2, the standard 3, you will find when you compare them, only 20% of students at standard 3 would be able to read standard 2 subjects. And this is in the government schools, and in the private schools, it's a little higher. And when you compare the same, and the students move up to class 8th, the percentage is a little higher, but still it's very very disappointing state of affairs. And same goes when you look at the reading of letters and recognition of numbers. We have similar challenges. I'm trying to highlight it with this very specific agenda, that we need to understand what is the quality of education that we are today providing to these youngsters who at least decide to stay in the schools for some time until upper secondary or higher secondary stage. Now, the COVID has also put lots of challenges on us. We have seen many students who have been treated and trained and taught through online mode of education. Most of these children will have these digital gadgets with them, but unfortunately, data is indicating more than 27% of the students do not have access to internet. So they may have a small gadget or a smartphone at home, but they are not able to access that. The big challenge that we have when we look at the skilling, while there's a huge opportunity of employment in most of the sectors, if you look at various sectors, auto sector, healthcare sector, manufacturing sector, agriculture, or retail, or in any other sector, you'll find huge job employment opportunities. But unfortunately, when you compare with the formal skill training of our youths, we are far, far behind. The challenge is what the previous speaker also said, that there is a velocity of change, and speed of disruption is very high. The new technologies are replacing very faster. The shelf life of the skills learned earlier is quickly vanishing. So the pressure on the institutions is even higher, that how do we prepare students for a lifelong learning approach so that they continue to stay relevant in the field as long as they live in the job market. Look at the innovation side. And why I am showing this innovation part, because this is very important, because this is critical for India to become a employable nation. If we do not have more innovations happening in the country, we may not have new opportunities of employment coming in the country. So I also found this very, very relevant, that because it also depends on how we are developing and grooming our children in the country. Currently, India's ranking is around 48th in the overall innovation ranking. There's a similar situation on the patent, so I'm not bringing that chart here, but I was looking at the patents. It's also very dismal. Look at the latest report of India Skills, report 2022. It shows only less than 40% graduates who are coming out of the institutions are employable, and various segments have shown even that employability is even lesser than 40%. In some sectors, it's less than 30%. Now, this is a situation which India can easily avoid. We have a huge demographic dividend, which Vatal Sahab also talked about, a young economy, a young population. And if this population is not provided with the relevant skills, relevant knowledge, relevant competencies, we will be missing the bus and we will not be able to meet the challenges that India has to address to. And this demographic dividend can turn into a demographic demon in near future. So India has a great opportunity, and there are opportunities emerging in many, many countries where the economies are aging and they are looking for youngsters to support them. And India is one of the countries which has a huge potential if we are preparing our youngsters for these vocations. The challenge is that when we compare the vocational training we provide in India compared to the vocational requirements in other countries, for example, in the West or in the some Asian countries where there are employment employment opportunities. The qualification standards are not parable. So there is a need to make sure that the qualification standards that we offer here in the vocational education are similar to the global standards. So standardization of qualification, vocational qualification training is also required if we have to really leverage the demographic dividend. So I find a great opportunity if we are wanting to really leverage this demographic dividend. We have to bring in the best in class of skilling and training at the early stages of life. I have picked up these 5 areas which are very, very critical, and our ancient education also focused on these parts: the cognitive, physical, social, emotional, technological, and language. These are the 6 areas that I think are very, very critical, and schools will have to play an important role. And unless we address all these 6 skills at the school level, unless we relook at the curriculum, the way we are offering it to the students, we will not be able to meet the challenges that come at the later stage when these students become eligible for higher education or they want to enter into the labor market at the early stage. So what is important is that while on the one side, we have to focus on integrating various skills into the curriculum and the syllabus that we have designed for the school level, we have to make sure that the curriculum is designed in such a way that it provides opportunities of reasoning, problem solving, evaluating, decision making, and analyzing as a set of critical thinking at the early stages of the life. So how we help students to listen more, how we help students to comprehend and respond, how we help students to read and write, how we help students to reflect. These are some active learning techniques that we have to make sure they are curated in our curriculum at the early stages. Whatever you are teaching, whether you are teaching English, you are teaching math, you are teaching social studies, you are teaching science, teachers have to relook at the new pedagogical methods that are designed keeping into view these skills in whatever they are teaching. And then they are combining vocations at the early stages. So government has also brought in the new legislation, the New Education 2020, that we can see in the next chart. So focus has to be on how we create a whole brain development of the children at the school level. And that can only happen when the faculties, teachers are bringing in a very sustained redesigning of the curriculum at the early stages of the school. The new education policy, as we have seen clearly, has made a tectonical shift from the erstwhile 10+2 model to 5+3+3+4, and it is going to address the very, very specific requirements right from the formative stages of the brain development to the later part of the development in a more structured manner. But I think it's going to take time because such transformations do not happen in one day, but every school can at least at their own level rework on such aspects. We have developed in our own university a KG to PG model. Sri Vishwakarma Skill University is the first of its kind to bring in the Skill Innovative School, which is approved by the CBSE. In this school, besides the 2 general subjects, mathematics, science, social studies, a student has a choice along with language subjects. The students are offered 2 additional compulsory subjects, which they have to pick up from the list of 15 vocational subjects. So on the right-hand side, if you can see the skill-based subjects, these are the approved CBSE subjects. So we have created our own curriculum here in the school with the help of CBSE, and we are offering these subjects to students. The student has a choice to pick up any of these subjects. What is the difference when we offer these subjects? What we have done at the school level, we have created a feeder school model where student, once entering the Sri Vishwakarma Skill University School, Innovation School, has an opportunity right from class 8th onwards until PhD to be within the school and aligned to the vocational modeling that we have done for the higher education. So what we have done at the school level is we have recreated the infrastructure. We have developed a very structured teacher training process. The curriculum has been revamped and redesigned with applied learning And then the pedagogical intervention. This is the first university where we have developed a pedagogy department. And this pedagogy department focuses on bringing in new methods and new pedagogies to teaching. Besides, the target of this pedagogy is also to align with the national skill qualification framework. So whichever programs we have identified, the teaching methods we have identified, we have made sure that the level of that respective qualification is mapped with the competencies that are required for that. And then the new rubrics have been developed for the assessments. So assessments are also designed on the outcome basis. Besides all this, we have made sure there are 5 Lokvidyas integrated in the school. So the children have a choice. They can pick up any one Lokavidya during their school days and master that Lokavidya during the period they stay with the school. Or that's the choice that the students have been given. So this is how we are focusing right now at the Vishwakarma Skill University for KG to PG model. And I'm sure this will bring in a little difference in the approach a student today has and the values this vocational education right at the early stages, rather than vocational education gets forced on the children. And our focus is not to only create job seekers, our focus is to create job creators from the institution. So as they grow, they not only look for the job, but they try to create jobs themselves. So I stop myself here. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Raj. You have beautifully articulated the present scenario, and you have also possibly hinted at what best could be done. And your model of KG to PG university is absolutely fantastic and perhaps the first of its kind in this country. And your 4P syndrome, I'm sure, must have caught the attention of the audience. Problem of perception, progression, parity, and practice. That is something that we are going to take it forward. Now we are entering into the last 15 minutes of this program, and therefore we will utilize it to pick the minds of these experts, probably in the mode of a rapid fire kind of thing. And I will jump onto Mr. Vatal with his vast experience and the scenario, sir, that you are seeing and visualizing. Can you suggest that under these circumstances, what is one practice from the past that we must continue? And what is one practice that we must abandon? And if you can also suggest 1 or 2 innovative practices which we can take away from your presentation. Mr. Vatal.
I didn't understand the practice from the past. What did you imply?
I mean, the educational model that we have followed in this country so far, is there anything that must continue?
Life is actually about both continuity and change. You don't start somewhere in the beginning and just break up from the past. And even these words like we use, disruption and all that, nowadays, we used to call them earlier, we use the word obsolescence, and technology always changes, life changes. So yes, as I said, I was associated with the making of the new education policy in 1986, which is very, very far back. I was part of something which doesn't exist now, was the development ministry, which encompassed about 7 departments, including health ministry, culture, sports, women and child development, half of film certification and film development, which was part of INB, Department of Art. So it was a huge setup in which this NEP was made. And I think we've seen a lot of progression since then. I mean, I've been in this setup for a long time. But as I said, the new things which have happened now is this whole focus on integrating. We've been working in silos all the time. Even in the skill development, you find my experience has been that in ministries, 20 departments were doing different type of programs. Now with this creation of the skill development ministry, these things are being brought together.
Okay.
One of the most innovative things which have been done in the policy is to bring in entrepreneurship development, which I don't think anybody talked about it in the past. But there are huge challenges still. While the university in which Mr. Raj Nehru is the vice chancellor, I saw the website, they're doing a fantastic job. But there are huge issues of costs which are involved. Even this Ministry of Skill Development, it spends around 2,000 crores is the budget approximately. It may be spending around the same amount every year. For a country which is so huge, it's really not a very big amount. In fact, to address a problem where I said that, as Raj Nehru mentioned, that a huge swathe of population is actually kept out of the formal sector or formal education or whatever. Even your new education policy, if you see, 90% of it is formalized education we're talking about. Vocational is a part of higher education it comes in. So I think one of the challenges which we have to face is how do we make the best use of resources which are available with us, whether it's with the governments, whether it is with the state governments, whether it is in the private sector, and how do we make this kind of education affordable also, because we are dealing with vulnerable sections, and good high level skilling is not cheap. It costs money. So as I said, there is this whole issue of, yes, continuity is there. We are not rediscovering things from the beginning, but there are new things which are happening, and I'm glad that this whole thing about the 4IR was mentioned, the fourth industrial revolution.
Yeah.
It's a kind of a buzzword that people use it. We are in the state of fourth industrial revolution, but what is it? It actually deals with three specific areas which are evolving now. Unlike the agriculture revolution or the industrial revolution. I mean, the 4IR is really about information communication technologies, which includes artificial intelligence, blockchain, stuff like that. Then there is this whole area of materials technology, which is evolving, which is part of 4IR. And finally, the third pillar of this 4IR is bioengineering. I mean, what you've heard of mRNA vaccines and things like that. The whole domain of medicine is going to change, and therapeutics is going to change. Now, this will require skilling at various levels, in the sense not only very high-level scientists, but middle-level skills, low-level skills, for which the education system has to have the necessary resilience. I mean, children have to be taught, or young adults have to be taught to handle change. And then we have to have platforms where you can adjust to this change. I mean, skilling requirements are going to change. It's a huge challenge, I think, that we face. Thank you. I'll stop here.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Dr. Hasija.
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Ratan. We know we are just another 10 minutes. So very short question to Dr. Vinay Thakur. On one hand, Dr. Ratan said that we need to prepare our children for the change. Professor Raj Nehru said it that, we have to redefine the 3R, read, write, and arithmetic, into the reskilling and re-strengthening. He shared the 6 paradigm: cognitive and the physical, social. But my concern in current scenario is, you can see my back screen. In the last 1.5 years or 2 years, we have switched over to technology like anything. You are the Additional Secretary, Ministry of IT. On one hand, we need technology. It's one of the pillars of the fourth revolution, industrial revolution. On the other hand, Dr. Ratan said there is a huge equity which is to be balanced. Also, there's a talk about digital divide. And as a principal, I hear parents coming to me. They say, enough of technology. We don't need this skill, because child is blocked into the 4 walls of the room. He is losing language. He is losing physical. He is losing social. He is losing emotional. Sir, what is the take of it? What is the next step? How do we proceed? Over to you, Dr. Vinay Thakur, sir.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, definitely, as even Bhattal sir was talking of, we need to have a hybrid approach. So we cannot stop what is going on, but we can go on seeing to it that we have a changing scenario built into this. For even teaching also, where we had a teacher-centric approach earlier, where teacher was expert and student was passive, and then to teaching-centric, where student has also become little active in that sense, to learning-centric, which now we are talking of. And where we have to encourage and then see to it that we give more focus on one's own thinking. We enable the problem-based learning to them, and also see to it that they work on a field-based projects. Yes, during COVID, definitely there was a big focus, and that was the only alternative that we were dependent on the digital mediums, starting from e-Shiksha to multiple other programs which were started by the government. But then there was divide also, because the citizen, that's the student in rural areas, they don't have those facilities and internet out there, and then probably they were left out of this. That was one scenario. And next scenario which you were talking of, that they were held up to the devices, not only studying through that digital medium, but also searching for something else. So yeah, definitely there were issues around that. And we are working on a number of programs. We are working on one program called NDR, which is a National Education Digital Architecture, where we are combining everything together. So instead of having a multiple systems, multiple interfaces for students, so we are creating an integrated system out there where student can look for the content, the quality content, not the content which probably that time we created on Shiksha, but little bit better immersive type of content. Also integrating various other aspects of scholarship, aspects of even educational private vendors coming into a system and then contributing together. So that system is being worked out for higher education and even for school education.
I agree.
We are also starting to under school education channels, which are likely to be launched from 1st July of this year, which was a budget announcement. And we have started working on this, where every class almost, not only the class, also for skills, also for coaching. So we are going to start multiple training, multiple channels. So
my apologies, sir. There's a paucity of time, so we have
to. Yeah. So
one word.
I just want to say that that this learning-centric model, probably which we are right now working, we must see to it that we implement that, and implement the educational policy which talks of multilingual things, which talks of learning our culture, which talks of stopping brain drain, and which talks of having the project-based learning, the product-based learning probably implemented in the country. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Thakur, for your very innovative ways of taking things forward you have shared with us. At this fag end, I would just conclude before I invite my colleague to propose a vote of thanks. It has been a wonderful discussion. 2 or 3 things have come out very clearly. We had to reimagine education for the sake of our children, for the sake of our country, to bring a human capital force, equity and excellence for everybody, and to ensure that this Dr. Raj Nehru talked about demographic dividend. It does not convert into something of a nightmare. You mentioned about the dropout rates, which are very scary, and we must tackle it. We must arrest, first of all, the dropout, and then do something to bring them back. NEP has also talked about it. So thank you very much. And I will quickly invite my colleague, Ms. Reena Rajpal, to propose a vote of thanks. Reena. Unmute yourself, please.
Thank you so much, Dr. Pandey. Yeah, today's discussion is something about which I think India is dreaming today in a big way. The dream of an Atmanirbhar Bharat. So, Mr. Bhattal, sir, thanks for bringing out the challenge of decreasing the gap between employability and employment, which is possible only through training people in a skill as per their aptitude. as you said, sir. An effort to bring the necessary changes to meet the challenges and align the demand with the supply is something we all look forward to. Dr. Vinay Thakur, you truly pointed out, sir, the need to empower people in states through MSMEs, through ATLs, and AIs in schools. And yes, the focus which the government has on developing skills through technology is the need of the hour. Mr. Rathnayar, sir, the data that you showed brought out the challenges faced by our country. The jobs which are sustainable and high-paying need to be cultivated so that the dream of our Atmanirbhar Bharat becomes a reality. A lifelong learning approach, if brought about, will groom Indians into innovators. Yes, India has a huge potential. So if we work with the right mindset, we will become globally recognized by educating our future generation well. The critical thinking and creative thinking skills that we plan to develop every day in our schools is going to go a long way. And of course, a huge thanks to our great moderators, Dr. Pandey sir and Dr. Hasija sir, for steering such an important and sensitive discussion so very perfectly. Thank you so much. Thanks to the total panel for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Reena. Thank you,
Thank you.
Bhatt
Thank you,
sir,
everyone. Thank
Dr.
you.
Thakur, and Professor Raj.
Thank you, sir. All of you, Dr. Pandey, Dr. Hasija, Mr. Wattal, Dr. Vinay Thakur, and Mr. Raj Nehru. I'm truly grateful to all of you for coming in, and what an insightful and empowering, enriching session. We are truly grateful. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank
Have a
you.
good
Thank
day.
you. Over to you, Sudha. All the
Thank you,
best.
sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you to our eminent panelists